Hey everyone, it's Tuesday, April 15th. You're watching CBC News BC. I'm Benit Brach here in the Vancouver newsroom, and here are your top stories this afternoon. We're going to start with a massive data breach in Interior Health. A CBC News investigation found 28,000 social insurance numbers were stolen in the data breach. It's not clear how many of those names were exploited by fraudsters. The Fifth Estate found stolen identities from several Interior Health employees have been used to obtain bogus CRA refunds and fraudulent loans in the past year. The BC legislature had heated discourse about this today.
What kind of gong show is this government running in Interior Health? You can't get a doctor or count on an ER room, but if you're a nurse, you can now count on your information being stolen.
Interior Health took diligent steps to investigate the matter, to support the RCMP investigation that's underway. They've also hired external security experts to conduct dark web searches and ensure that personal information, and they have confirmed that personal information is not on the dark web.
Conservative leader John Rustad called for a complete review of the system and all its vulnerabilities. Interior Health says RCMP are continuing to investigate the breach, which is before the courts. Okay, and when it comes to the federal election, an outgoing Conservative MP has endorsed an independent candidate in the riding of Abbotsford South Langley. Outgoing Abbotsford Conservative MP Ed Fast has endorsed independent Mike DeYoung in the federal election. Earlier this year, DeYoung said the Conservative Party had rejected him as a candidate. The party nominated 25-year-old Sukhman Singh Gill instead, and Fast told the Early Edition this morning that he still supports a potential Conservative government, but is disappointed with how the situation in his riding was handled.
It's profoundly dishonest how for a full year you have a number of candidates who have campaigned vigorously. They've signed up thousands of members to the party. And then at the 11th hour, the party pulls the rug out from the one candidate that was expected actually to win the nomination.
DeYoung has won 8 terms in the BC legislature and has held cabinet posts including finance and forestry. Sukhman Gill is a blueberry farmer and businessman who has addressed the high cost of living, unaffordable housing, and rising crime rates on his platform. Abbotsford South Langley was created from Abbotsford and Langley Eldergrove. And soccer fans were just one day away from the historic opening match of the Northern Super League soccer season, and Vancouver Rise FC will host Calgary Wild FC at BC Place tomorrow night. This game marks the official launch of Canada's first professional women's soccer league, and Vancouver's head coach says it's been a unique experience building that team from the ground up.
We can't plan culture, we can't plan how the team comes together, but we have the opportunity to set and build the whole thing around values. Sometimes when you come in and take over a job, there are so many things you need to figure out. Can I change this now, or will this take time? We could just decide how we wanted to do this.
After the kickoff match, the rest of the season's games will be played at Burnaby's Swangard Stadium. And you are updated this afternoon. You're watching CBC News BC. Stay here. BC Today is up in 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Well, is crime a big issue for you in this election? Some plans from the Conservatives are putting crime in the spotlight, like a 3 strikes rule and life sentences for multiple murder convictions. We'll talk to a criminologist and take your calls. Plus, Canadian travel to the United States has plummeted amid President Trump's tariffs, and California is feeling the heat. And now Governor Gavin Newsom is urging Canadians to go back to Cali. Let us know what you think about that. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. The Conservative Party is pledging to carry out a tough on crime agenda as it centers crime and public safety in its campaign platform. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says if he becomes prime minister, he plans to use the notwithstanding clause to allow consecutive life sentences for people convicted of multiple murders. Now, the clause allows Ottawa or the provinces to temporarily override sections of Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
I am announcing today a Conservative government will reintroduce and pass the law that empowered judges to impose consecutive sentences for killers convicted of multiple murders. The worst mass murderers should never be allowed back on our streets. For them, a life sentence should mean what it says, a life sentence. They should only come out in a box.
Pierre Poilievre says he respects Supreme Court decisions, but also says Canadians' charter rights guarantee life, liberty, and security. Now, the other federal leaders are hitting back. Liberal leader Mark Carney called it a slippery slope, and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said it undermines the charter.
I think this is a very dangerous step. We have a charter of rights and fundamental freedoms in this country, and it's the responsibility, in my view, of the Prime Minister, of the Government of Canada to defend that charter, those fundamental rights and responsibilities and liberties.
We obviously need to have severe penalties for people that commit horrible crimes. And right now we have that ability. We've got a criminal justice system where judges are able to make that determination. And that should continue as is. When it comes to the notwithstanding clause, I believe that we should not be using it. It undermines the charter, and the charter is important.
It said basically that provinces, parliaments, would keep that measure of sovereignty, being able to remove themselves from the application of the federal chart. It hasn't been conceived for the federal government to use it against a federal law.
Okay, you heard there Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh and Liberal leader Mark Carney. Well, what do you think of what you are hearing from the federal politicians, federal leaders on crime, and how do you think the parties should address crime and public safety in this election? How does it factor into your vote? You can call us now, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. My guest is Wade Deisman, Associate Dean of Social Sciences at the University of the Fraser Valley. Hello, Wade. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Great to be back.
So where do you place crime and public safety in terms of the range of issues in this election? It seems it's been a lot about Trump, but what about crime and public safety?
Well, I think crime and public safety, increasingly things like the fentanyl crisis, the foreign interference issue, which is about national security, but public safety as well, increasingly feature quite prominently in Canadians' imagination of what the future looks like. And I think we're starting to see some fairly distinct and different paths coming forward in this regard, in terms of the differentiation between the New Democrats and the Liberals and the Conservatives. I think this announcement, this announcement regarding the use of the notwithstanding clause kind of cements the trajectories I'm seeing.
Let's go through those distinctions. And the big news yesterday was Pierre Poilievre saying, I'm going to implement multiple consecutive sentences for people who are convicted of multiple murders. And he said he would use the notwithstanding clause if elected. Can you go through, first of all, what that does enable a politician to do?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think, this announcement needs to be understood as kind of part of a suite of kind of proposals that they put forward. A couple of weeks ago or last week, they indicated that they were going to bring back the idea of the three strikes law. And so what we're seeing in this latest proposal really is the use of the notwithstanding clause to justify, having sentences served consecutively, which would mean basically you can lock somebody up for life. And this is, I think, been a longstanding debate. It's about what we call penal populism. It's a kind of suite of reforms which are designed to kind of increase the kind of the pain and suffering associated with incarceration. The justification is sometimes that deterrence will result, but I have to say, in the cases of people who commit mass murder, there's no indication of that being the case. People who have committed these kinds of crimes and have been interviewed often say that there was nothing that would stop them from having done that. So that's what's going on in this case. I think in the past, in the Bissonnette ruling, the court held that not holding out any possibility of redemption and release was a violation of Section 12 of the Charter, which defines, cruel and unusual punishment. And I think the commentators, both from the Liberals and the New Democrats, are correct in saying that this is really a test of the integrity of the Charter here. The notwithstanding clause has not been invoked by the federal government. The only time it was ever discussed, to my knowledge anyway, was during the crisis after 9/11. And even though the laws formulated during that period were quite severe, they did not test the Charter directly, and that was a decision made.
I just want to go back to what you mentioned regarding the Bissonnette decision, and this is just for context for everybody. This is the case of Alexandre Bissonnette, who killed 6 people in a Quebec City mosque in 2017. Now, there was a lower court decision that essentially gave leeway for the judge to give him a long, essentially no eligibility for a much longer time than 25 years. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Wade. And then it got to the Supreme Court of Canada, which decided to limit that ineligibility for just 25 years, which is the norm. Which is the first chance that you would get because of those reasons that you cited.
Oh, you're exactly right. That's what occurred. And I think the concern was that these kinds of situations could mount up if these concurrent or consecutive, sentences were allowed.
Let's take some calls here now. My guest, Wade Deisman, is the Associate Dean of Social Sciences at the University of Fraser Valley. And we're asking you, so what do you make of what you're hearing when it comes to crime and public safety in this election? How should it be addressed, and how does it factor into your vote? Want to hear from you. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Let's take some calls here. Eric is on the line from Nanaimo. Yeah, what do you think of this issue in the election, Eric?
Hi, guys. Thank you for taking my call. I think what Carney said was pretty accurate. It's a very slippery slope. I will admit we need reforms in our criminal justice system. There's no doubt that needs to happen. But the way that Pierre Poilievre wants to go about it, it's just a slippery slope. And to me, that sounds like something like Donald Trump would do with his executive orders. And Wayne, I'd like to ask you a question. In comparison to the notwithstanding clause, what's that like in comparison to the executive orders that Donald Trump has signed, if you can at all compare Canadian and American politics in that manner?
Thanks, Eric.
No, I think it is. I'm sorry. I think it is a reasonable comparison and analogy to draw. I think, because it's constitutional in its scope, it's an extreme measure. And it's similar to the United States in invoking this idea that there's a kind of exceptional state or circumstance that justifies overriding the courts. And I think that's the concern that's arising in a very significant way as time and time again, those powers are being exercised. Once you exercise them the first time, I think it's correct. It is a slippery slope. When are they able to be exercised again? What are the circumstances? And I think that creates a completely different focus. And I think, what's really important to bear in mind is if you look at the crime statistics and if you look at the number of multiple, what we call mass murders that occur in a given year, we're talking about a very, very, very tiny number, somewhere in the neighborhood of between 3 and 7. And so, if you think of crime as a kind of a forest fire, what we're doing here in this case, talking about this issue in this way, is we're picking the absolutely smallest tree in the most remote area of the forest and focusing a tremendous amount of water trying to extinguish a fire there that won't be extinguished through deterrence while the rest of the fire continues to blaze. And so, and exercising quite extreme powers and authorities. And I think, this is kind of shirking the meat and potatoes issues that we need to struggle with in terms of, law and order and crime and justice in the name of, I think, signaling to the conservative base that we're going back to a kind of doctrine of maximum severity mentality.
Well, you called it penal populism there earlier, but what about the need for reform that Eric acknowledged we have? And I think you've just said as well, there is need for change. We did our open line yesterday on the 9th anniversary of the toxic drug crisis. And there were callers who were very frustrated that there are people who have been dealing fentanyl and leading to death. So what does need to be reformed?
Yeah, I really appreciate the question, and I share the callers' frustrations. I share, Canadians' frustrations about this. It's a very, very difficult and complex situation, I have to say. But one thing I would call our attention to is the Mass Casualty Commission actually looked at this question of multiple murders, and it made a series of recommendations, which I think have a resonance and extension that addresses a lot of the struggles that we're dealing with. It talked about root cause problems, and I think that's where we need to get to in this country, is talking about the root causes of crime. And when we start to do that, we start to look at things like homelessness. We start to look at the economic situation. We start to realize that these individualistic explanations of criminality really have a very quite limited remit. And when we look at the addiction crisis, for example, what we know is that addiction is, in some part anyway, due to social isolation, due to unmet needs, all of the things that result from being homeless, from being unemployed, all of those kinds of things. So that's why I said there are complex solutions and complex thinking that's necessary here. There's not going to be a panacea. There's not going to be a silver bullet. I think we need to look to all of the parties in terms of whether they've got a kind of comprehensive approach. We know that the RCMP has decided to move away from contract policing, and that's partially because that model doesn't seem to be able to work in municipalities in the same way that was hoped. And so we need to develop a municipal policing model. And I think, BC has been on the forefront of that with the Surrey transition, right? That's one of the pieces that's broken, is our approach to policing. We have this expectation that police are Swiss Army knives, that they can do everything, right? And that can't possibly work. So reform there is necessary. I think reform in terms of the organized nature of crime is absolutely necessary. I think, we see with the Liberals, they've got something in there about financial crime. We've got to go after the dealers, of course, and there has been some successes recently in that regard as we're learning from people around the world.
We have an email on somewhere along those lines. Randy writes, the three strikes law has had poor results in the United States, in states that adhered. More informants lying to gain latitude, more hard criminals resorting to last-ditch efforts to avoid certain prison time, and organized crime elements bribing their way out of trouble. I see a three-pronged approach to reducing crime and increasing public safety. First, hire more street-ready social workers to free up police. Second, increase the sentences and reduce the parole for all violent crimes. And lastly, increase the number of police and judges in high violent crime areas. Randy, thanks for weighing in on that. Let's take some more calls here. Lots of people are wanting to chime in. Mehdi in Victoria, what are your thoughts on what you're hearing when it comes to crime?
I think the Conservatives are playing a game here. They are trying to manipulate our society during the election by fear and anger. Where is the statistic to show there is too much crime? There was more crime in average, crime rate in 1980s than today. So why is this issue? Because they can manipulate the public by fear and anger and divert attention from the most important issues like healthcare. For example, in the debate this week, the safety and security is going to be discussed, but not healthcare. That they are going to privatize it little by little. Not poverty, not homelessness, not putting people with mental illness out of hospitals, close down the hospitals, cut the social expenditure in order to give more money, tax cut to the rich. We should not be manipulated by these fraud artists during the election. I hope people realize that and don't fall for it.
Mehdi, thank you so much for the call. Dave is up in Terrace wanting to comment on crime and public safety in this election. Hi, Dave.
Hi, I just want to say I totally disagree with the last caller. As somebody with a young family, street crime and how theft is more prevalent now in regular neighborhoods and violent theft is more prevalent. Things have gotten so much worse. It's in our face now. It used to be on the fringe of society. It's gotten so much worse. And these guys, this is where I think the consecutive sentences would be great. Even if it's a minor offense, I'm sorry, but you've done 3 things in a row and you keep getting let out to go steal our stuff again. Sorry, you should be locked up for longer. Everybody knows stealing is wrong. And the regular citizens are the ones that are keeping this country going. We're paying taxes while we're watching these guys have a revolving door. And people with young families, it is a completely different Canada now than the people, even, with kids who are in their teens now, young toddlers, people with young toddlers. It is a way different country. And it's actually kind of disgusting the way that people who have already raised their families view this country. Things have changed drastically, and things need to change again.
Dave, thank you very much for the call from Terrace. Let's head to Burnaby now, and Roy has some thoughts on crime in this election. Hi, Roy.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I think I agree with the speaker that, with the guest speaker, that Poilievre is trying to be populist here, trying to manipulate, just like the other caller said, the mass, the people. This is what Duterte in the Philippines did, trying to create some fear, and yet could not present exact statistics to prove that there was really a drug menace in the country. And so he created a fake Jayagobor and killed thousands of Filipinos.
Roy, thank you for the call from Burnaby and talking there about Rodrigo Duterte, former president of the Philippines, and the issues around extrajudicial killings in his what he called the drug war. 30,000 killed and up to 30,000 killed, and the extrajudicial killings are now subject of an international criminal court hearing. Thank you so much. Harry is up next now in Richmond. Hi, Harry.
Hello. Yeah, regarding just crime in general. If you, I was talking to your staff member, when somebody kills somebody or hurts someone, I don't understand why are we giving them the benefit of 25 years to get a chance to get out. You take somebody's life, you should automatically get life. There shouldn't be an option that 25 years I have a chance to live a happy life or go and maybe possibly hurt somebody else again. I know that what I'm saying might offend a lot of people, but
it's a fair question, Harry.
Yeah, my philosophy or the way I look at things is, you do the crime, you do the time. Anything you do wrong, you gotta atone for it, or it's like they say, karma.
Okay.
What goes around comes around.
Harry, thank you very much. I just want to make sure that that Wade has time to answer that question about what is behind that idea of the 25-year eligibility for parole.
Well, I think there are a number of factors, but I think the first one, I think it's really important to get out there just in terms of the three strikes law period. I'll come back to the question of murder, but is that, yeah, crime costs inordinately, but so does punishment. We should remember that to incarcerate an adult male in Canada costs between $120,000 and $200,000 a year. So if we're talking about a 25-year sentence, we're talking about 25 years when, somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000 could be spent elsewhere. And I think, there's a kind of philosophy that's involved in criminology about getting smart with justice and crime and saying, can we balance our need for incapacitation with a commitment to rehabilitation, with a commitment to restitution, and those kinds of things. And otherwise, the community can pay inordinately because these numbers add up very quickly. Remember, we're talking year upon year. So over 10 years, if we were to follow this approach, it would be $1 billion the first year, $2 billion the second year, 3, and going on from there. And this is why they ran into trouble in the United States. Now, coming back to the question of why isn't it an eye for an eye, I think we all recognize that as one penal policy. And the idea is that the punishment should fit the crime. Well, we've given up on capital punishment in this society. So the question is, what kind of punishment is appropriate? And do we believe in second chances in Canada at all? I think that it's perfectly fair, perfectly respectable position for some people to hold that, no, we don't. But a lot of others, I think, do.
My guest, Wade Deisman, Associate Dean of Social Sciences at the University of the Fraser Valley. And Wade, so what, when that 25 years comes, what happens? How often do people actually go on parole? Because this is eligibility, right?
That's right. It's eligibility. And of course, they have to meet with the parole board and they have to make a case. And in the cases of multiple murders, I think it's very difficult to make the case. The parole board observes, I think, a much higher standard in terms of showing that somebody has genuinely reformed. You should note that, of course, as soon as these folks begin serving their sentence, they begin working on a correctional plan, which involves, looking at what are the root causes of what happened in these cases. I find it difficult to talk in a kind of holistic way about criminality as though it's all the same. And I want to come back to the point that I made earlier about kind of, the individualistic notion of criminality and a kind of more collectivist understanding that is based in root causes. I want to talk about Indigenous perpetrators and the recognition in Gladue that many of these folks are struggling with, with all kinds of conditions that are associated with the process of colonization. So it seems to me, unfair and a travesty to talk about those folks at the same time that we talk about, cases where there might be a more individualistic kind of way of explaining things. And I guess that the more general caution to people is that one, can perpetrate injustice when the system punishes too harshly and too much.
Wade, great to have your analysis. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
My thanks to our guest, Wade Deisman, Associate Dean of Social Sciences at the University of the Fraser Valley. Let me just quickly take Alan in New Westminster. Hi, Alan.
Hello there.
Yes, hi. What are your thoughts on crime in this election?
I think it's a red herring altogether. I doubt there are more than 100 mass murderers in Canada at the moment, maybe much less. And I think we need to concentrate on things like healthcare and the climate crisis that affects everybody, not just this small group of people.
Alan, thank you so much. I know you held the line for a while there, so thanks for your patience. That's Alan in New Westminster. And do remember, CBC will have live coverage of the English language federal leaders debate. That's this Thursday, April 17th, starting at 4 p.m. Pacific. You can join CBC Radio 1 for full coverage, along with analysis and the leaders' Q&A sessions with reporters following the debate. And then stay tuned. Cross Country Checkup will take calls from across Canada to discuss how the leaders did. Just 10 days until the the election, of course, on April 28th. That will be hosted by Susan Bonner, Pia Chattopadhyay, and Ian Hanamansing. The English language leaders debate this Thursday. It's 12:31 now. This is BC Today here on CBC. Thank you so much for all of your calls. Lots of emails coming in as well. We'll get to that in a moment right now. And we're going to talk as well about a plea from California's governor for Canadians to go back to traveling to his state of California. We'll talk about that and ask you for your thoughts. That's all coming up after this CBC News Update with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. Opposition politicians are demanding more information from the provincial government about an apparent data breach that saw more than 28,000 social security numbers and other personal information stolen from Interior Health employees. The CBC's Fifth Estate found the stolen identities were being used to obtain fraudulent loans. Health Minister Josie Osborne says a number of steps are being taken to deal with the breach as well as the consequences. 3 housing groups here in BC are calling for party leaders in the federal election to promise urgent and sustained investment in nonprofit and cooperative housing. The organizations say the next federal government has to make housing safe, secure, and affordable. The groups say the federal government needs to contribute more than $2 billion a year to meet BC's housing needs. And a 55-year-old Surrey man is facing sex assault charges after 3 separate assaults on SkyTrain and the Canada Line. The incidents include a woman reporting to police that a man had made inappropriate physical contact with her on a crowded train. The man has been released on strict conditions, including restricted access to transit. And now the forecast on the North Coast, clearing late this afternoon with a high of 9. Highs up to 9 with a mix of sun and cloud in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, lots of sunshine with strong winds and a high of 9 as well. Highs around 18 with a mix of sun and cloud this afternoon in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, mainly sunny with a high of 19. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, lots of sunshine this afternoon with highs around 18 degrees. That's your CBC News Update from Vancouver.
Rob, thank you very much. That's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. And we were talking about crime and public safety in this election in our last half hour. Lots of emails coming in. Stephen writes, Pierre Poilievre is playing the fear card. It's one of the oldest, most manipulative tricks in the book. The other parties should be pointing that out. Jim writes, we need to stop thinking that police stop crime from happening. We should be looking at the underlying causes of crime. Kathy writes from Kelowna, Poilievre is doing nothing more than pushing the public fear button. He's also setting up ignoring the courts, just as Trump is doing at this exact moment in the United States. Of course, no one wants to see mass murderers out on the street after serving minimal time. We all want crime to be punished. We all want the streets to be safe. But defying the courts is not the way to do it. Working with the courts and justice system is. All Poilievre knows how to do is to push fear buttons one after another. Thank you for your emails. bctoday@cbc.ca once again is our email address. And lots of emails coming in. So we'll read some more of those as well tomorrow. Now, we also talked about the toxic drug crisis yesterday, 9 years since it was declared a public health emergency. And so we took your calls yesterday. And Darren writes, the majority of opioid users I've spoken to identify an injury as the original introduction to the drug class. I have 2 neighbors who died from prescription overdoses. I've yet to hear an apology from physicians about their involvement in the epidemic and the creation of addicts. Darren, thank you very much. I should note that in 2016, the BC College of Physicians and Surgeons introduced professional standards legally enforceable around the prescription of opioids. Thanks for your emails, bctoday@cbc.ca. $12:36 now. Thanks so much for being with us here on BC Today. I'm Michelle Elliott. Well, many Canadians are holding off on visiting the United States amid the tariffs and the talk of annexation or 51st state rhetoric from Donald Trump. Well, this has meant giving up some of those popular American destinations like California, even with its sun, surf, and sand. Well, California Governor Gavin Newsom has launched a tourism campaign to try and draw Canadians back. And here's a video he posted on social media in which he distanced his state from U.S. President Donald Trump and urged Canadians to, quote, come and experience the California love.
The Golden State and Canada have always shared so much in common. Sure, you know who's trying to stir things up back in D.C., but don't let that ruin your beach plans. California, it's the ultimate playground. 2,000 miles from Washington and a world away in mindset. From our iconic beaches and national parks to world-class wine, food, and outdoor adventure, there's something here for everyone. Last year, nearly 2 million Canadians visited California because here in California, we've got plenty of sunshine and a whole lot of love for our neighbors up north.
Well, that video and the campaign is getting some reaction here in BC. This morning, Housing Minister Ravi Kahlon was asked about Newsom's invitation.
My son plays basketball and he's got tournaments in the U.S. and I feel really bad, but he won't be going. And I've encouraged the team to not take the team down there. And so we all have to do this. And you know, again, I'm proud because I'm seeing it. I've talked to so many people who just randomly pull me over and say, I just canceled my trip to Florida. I just canceled my trip to Washington, D.C. I was going to go to New York. I'm not going anymore. That's the type of response that I was hoping to see from Canadians. And people are rediverting those dollars. Just yesterday, I met somebody just here in front of the legislature lawn who was taking pictures. I just talked to them. They were Canadians that were going to go to the U.S. but decided that they were going to travel to Victoria and to Vancouver for their holiday. Again, people are responding, and that's a positive thing.
Are you?
That's Ravi Kahlon speaking this morning. So politicians here in BC being asked about it. John Rustad, the leader of the BC Conservatives, was also asked about it just about an hour ago, and he said he worried that this would affect American tourism in retaliation when it comes to coming up here to Canada. Okay, so we have found from Stats Canada that the number of Canadian residents returning from a U.S. trip through the land border was down by a third last March compared to March of last year. And the reason's not necessarily clear. It may be avoiding U.S. travel amid President Donald Trump. It may be the dollar. But we are asking you, what do you think of Governor Newsom's plea to Canadian travelers? Would you heed it or not? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining me now is McKenzie McMillan, a travel consultant with The Travel Group. Welcome back, McKenzie.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Nice to see you. Now, you just watched this video, I think.
I did, actually. It came across my social media this morning, and it caught me off guard, and it was interesting.
What did you think?
It's a great ad campaign, and it's great to see the governor out front and center. One thing that struck me about it, as opposed to other, we've seen a little bit of outreach from other tourism destinations in the United States over the past, probably about the past few weeks to the past month.
I think Palm Springs had one, too.
Palm Springs had one as well, and also a couple other states and cities on the East Coast. What struck me about this one was that it does address the issue of Canadians' views to the U.S. federal government. And that's something that I hadn't seen in any previous outreach, that had just sort of acknowledged that Canadians were apprehensive about coming to Canada, but didn't really give a reason why or acknowledge those concerns. And this one is pretty much puts it front and center. So that was quite surprising.
Right, and I'm just pulled up an article here because well, part of that video, he actually says, "We know you know who was trying to stir things up."
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, Gavin Newsom is a very vocal opponent of Donald Trump. So there's that context as well. What are you seeing from your customers, from travelers?
Well, we're still seeing pretty much a complete drop off of any leisure travel to the United States. We have actually also seen a reduction in corporate travel as companies are a bit more concerned about the ongoing news of additional scrutiny at the border and potentially Canadians being either detained or turned around. That's a liability that a lot of companies don't want to put their employees through. So now we've got this whole other level of issue. It was an emotionally charged issue previously.
Right.
Now we're seeing an actual tangible issue of concern of safety and security for Canadians crossing the border. And unfortunately, all the goodwill from tourism boards to try to woo Canadians down, that may work if it's an emotional issue, but for people that are genuinely concerned about their own safety and security, it's going to be pretty hard to entice Canadians to go down, even with all the love and praise of the state of California or anywhere else.
Well, we did, speaking of just listening to Ravi Kahlon there talk about his son's basketball team, we did talk to the Surrey School Board last week where they've said that we're going to pause trips to the United States for those reasons of we don't know what kind of I guess, hurdles we're going to have to face when we're crossing the border.
Yeah, I think part of the problem too is that we're not really getting any great direction on what's happening with customs and border protection in the United States. So we're hearing anecdotal stories of people being turned away at the border, having their phones searched for particular political views. And obviously the story of Jasmine Mooney is front and center for a lot of Canadians, especially here in British Columbia. But we're not getting any direction as to what the actual procedures and policies are going to be for Canadians visiting. And so that obviously creates a lot of concern.
Jasmine Mooney is the Canadian actor who
That's right, yeah.
who was crossing from Mexico into the United States.
Yeah.
There were issues around her work visa, I believe, and she was detained for a few weeks, I believe.
Yeah, for an extended period of time, and so that's concerned a lot of Canadians, and it's been front and center on the news, especially here in British Columbia. So it was brought up quite a bit in the comment section of that video from Gavin Newsom as well. I had a chance to go through the comment section, and comment sections are not the greatest snapshot of total views.
Dumpster fire comes to mind, but yeah.
But they are. It was a lot of negative response to the video. So I think it's still a really emotionally charged issue for Canadians. And so the goodwill is great, and we love to see this from California, but I don't know if it's going to move the needle that much.
Yeah, I mean, that at least reflects the immediate kind of knee-jerk reaction to the video. Okay, let's take some calls. My guest is McKenzie McMillan, a travel consultant with a travel group, seeing a drop-off to leisure travel among Canadians to the United States. Stats Can reflects that as well. Now, Governor Gavin Newsom is saying, please come back, has issued a video and launched a campaign. We're asking you, what do you think of Gavin Newsom's plea to Canadians? Would you heed it or not? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Lots of people calling in on this now. Angela in Vancouver. Hi, what are your thoughts?
Oh, hi, how are you?
I am fine. Thanks so much for calling.
I'm really happy to call. And actually, there's something that triggered my call. I listened to what you were saying, or what you and your guests were saying, and I was thinking to myself, Canadians absolutely should be avoiding travel to the U.S. They should be avoiding it on economic terms, in terms of the impact on our own economy, in terms of the Trump threat, in terms of their personal safety. But what really triggered me to call right now was that I happen to be on Instagram, and friends of ours are traveling in the U.S. right now. They're in Atlanta. And one of our friends just posted, and he happens to be gay. One of our friends just posted, I was told today by a random crazy man that I am a bitch boy and I should leave Atlanta or he'll hang me.
Oh, my God.
Now, our friend who, he's quite the little comedian, and he makes light of it, so he writes back, so I'll be answering to bitch boy from now on. Thank you.
Oh,
but, I mean, seriously, who wants that harassment?
That's abhorrent.
Yeah, and that's something that we're hearing from a lot of LGBTQ travelers as well, is the concern about safety, because it's just so front and center in the States right now, social issues that are affecting particularly the LGBTQ community. So it's terrible that happened.
Angela, is your friend okay? Is your friend going to be coming back? Or?
Yeah, they're fine, and they're finishing their trip, and they will come back. But I mean, like, yeah. I mean, that's what's going on down there right now. Like, that's in real time.
I'm so sorry that that your friend was spoken to in that way. Thank you so much for calling in. That's Angela in Vancouver. Let's take another call now from Candy in Summerland. Hi, Candy. Your thoughts on this campaign from California Governor Gavin Newsom to entice Canadians back?
Hi there. No, I saw his plea on television, and I had an invitation with my boyfriend to go down to very good friends of ours to their son's wedding in Rancho Santa Fe outside of San Diego, and we hemmed and hawed, and with the American dollar and Trump's craziness, we have decided not to attend. Okay. And it's just, I agree with your last caller. We should try to avoid it. I love going to States. My daughter lives in Osoyoos. We used to always go down to Omak, and now we're just not going down for Mexican food and shopping. And I would be sad to miss the California wedding, but no, Governor Newsom didn't do it for me.
Do you know if there were other Canadians invited to that wedding who aren't going as well, or who are going?
I believe some sisters and brothers are.
Yeah.
Some close family are, and I don't blame them. Because sometimes I think, wow, why should politics interfere with travel plans? But, you know, it does. I don't feel good about going to States and supporting what's going on there right now. And with him threatening our country and Greenland, I was just offended big time. So no, I'll have to miss that California wedding.
Candy, thank you very much for the call from Summerland. I mean, when you think about California, especially, there's such close ties.
Oh yeah, I mean any of the West Coast states, we've got friends, family, business relationships between British Columbia and all three of those states specifically. So yeah, there's a lot of people that this isn't just a vacation that they're passing by. There could be weddings, like that caller said, or any other number of big events that you wouldn't want to miss. And it's something that Canadians are having to grapple with right now.
And you heard Candy say there, you know, politics shouldn't affect travel, and she said, but it kind of does. Like, do you see the sort of the thinking? What the dilemmas are that people are going through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's true. Like some people will take a stand on political reasons. I mean, we saw it in 2016, 2017, the first time.
The first Trump administration.
The first Trump administration. But for the most part, you know, people still want to travel and they want to experience the world, and they want to see their family, and try to remove, you know, and we've seen it a bit this time too, is try to remove the federal government of the United States to the American people. Because, you know, I've never, you know, there's lots of experiences in the United States with people that really enjoy Canadians and Canadians have an amazing time down there. And so we have to kind of differentiate the two, but at the same time, this is such a big issue for so many Canadians, and when you add it on with the border concern, it's hard to say it's not political, but at the same time, it seems bigger than that, I think, for a lot of Canadians.
And do you have a sense as to how much Canadians do account for tourism in California?
So California is the largest destination in the United States, for sure for BC, but for most of Canada as well. Canadians spent about $3.2 billion there last year, and it was just under 2 million Canadians that visited California. So when you look at the entire United States, it's about 10% of all travel to the United States was just to California. Wow. So it's a huge amount. And, you know, we were saying we've been on this, talked a few times on this show about this issue over the past few months. And we started with you know, there might be some boycotts or there might be people avoiding the US. And then we started to see numbers. And now I think the alarm bells are really going off with a lot of the tourism boards, because I think at the beginning, Americans weren't really getting the information, not really understanding how Canadians were feeling. And now that hard numbers are coming out, now we're seeing this outreach from Tourism California, from Palm Springs, from, you know, Arizona or Las Vegas. Any of these major destinations are starting to really feel the pinch, and that's jobs, that's tax revenue for them. So it's going to be a big deal.
Let's take some more calls. Mary in Christina Lake. Hi there. What are your thoughts on this plea, this petition to get more Canadians back to California?
Hi, I'm a dual citizen. I immigrated from California to Canada 50 years ago. And I traveled down there early in January for a family reunion. And all along the northwest main highway, there were pro-Trump signs, farmers for Trump, firemen for Trump, just everybody for Trump. And in the northeast corner, Modoc County, where my daughter and some friends live, it's downright unsafe to express an opposition to Trump. There are too many rednecks who want to fight, and it's best to just keep your mouth shut and don't wear anything that might let them know you're standing. And also, you can't get to California without spending money in other places. So we're still supporting the economy there. And sorry, Gavin, no deal.
Sorry, Gavin, no deal. And your daughter, I guess you're not going to be seeing her for a while.
No, I'm very, very glad that I had a reunion that I hadn't been able to have for a few years. And I hope and pray that nobody in my family gets sick or dies, because I don't want to be trying to decide if I would go down in an emergency. I'm absolutely boycotting the U.S.
It's that emotional for you. Mary, thank you so much for the call from Christina Lake. Richard at Mill Bay, hello.
Hi. Yeah, it's pretty emotional. I, too, have been here for 50 years, and I'm from the north part of California. And Gavin, I'm sure, is a wonderful human being. But don't forget, Palm Springs voted co-red. It's very, very conservative. The whole San Joaquin Valley is very, very Trump-oriented. And like your previous call, no, there's not a hope in living hell that I would go down. If that's not clear enough, I have a son who's in New York City. He can come up and visit me. He just had a new baby. His wife did. I'm very excited. They'd love to see us. They live down the street from Katz's Deli. No chance. Just no chance. But no,
Wow.
You know, there's an open carry law in Oregon. Do we have an open carry law here? Hell no. We don't need one here. We're Canadians. We're on Vancouver Island. We're even better than Canadians. Anyway, don't get me going.
You're going to have to get yourself a different sandwich then. No Katz's Deli for you. Richard, thank you very much. Ellie in Vancouver. Hi, what are your thoughts on this ad from Gavin Newsom?
Hey, Michelle. I want to just acknowledge what your guest said. BC does have historical connections to the West Coast, like all of Cascadia. We're kind of alike in a lot of ways. But I would say to folks, how many Canadians have really seen this country from, east to west, gone out to Cape Spear in Newfoundland and then gone out to the westernmost point of BC on Vancouver Island, or gone up north? For everywhere you want to go in the States, you want hot temperatures, go to the Okanagan. If you want to climb some mountains, go out to western Newfoundland. I really encourage Canadians to see this entire country. We have everything that we want right here. So I don't see the point. I would just say to Canadians, hold the line and elbows up.
Ellie, thank you very much. Are you seeing an increase across the country?
Tons of that, yeah. And actually, what we're seeing is a lot of interest in exploring parts of the country that you maybe aren't used to. So we're getting clients from the West Coast are very interested in places like Newfoundland and the Maritimes. I personally am embarrassed to say I haven't been to the Maritimes yet, so that's on my list now. I've got to get there.
Time to check it off.
Exactly, and then we have clients on the East Coast that are very interested in coming out to Tofino, Whistler, to the Vancouver Island, and maybe even Vancouver, but then further off places, the Okanagan. Check out the wines there. So I think that there is a real push for Canadians. It's all part of this Buy Canadian movement.
Yeah.
But that translates into tourism as well. And there are some amazing parts of Canada that some of us have never even seen or thought of, that now is the time to go.
Sure. And I think our previous caller would love to have you come to Vancouver Island. Our last caller is Kim in Vancouver. Hi, Kim.
Hello.
I think you want to make a similar point.
Yeah, I just want to say that Canada is an amazing country. We have so much to offer here. The other thing is, Canadians are nice people. Traveling within this country, you experience so much generosity.
Okay.
And I found at the times I've gone to the U.S., it's just grumpy, not very nice humans. So I would say stay here.
Okay, Kim, thank you very much. I have just a couple of minutes here, but what about that concern that John Rustad brought up, that this may end up hurting us because there may be retaliation and Americans not coming up here as well?
Certainly, that is a risk. We don't have any hard numbers on that. Obviously, with Americans coming up to cruise season, which just I think one of the first ships of the year is in port today here in Vancouver. So with cruise season beginning, we'll probably get a better idea of what the real numbers are of Americans traveling to Canada. As far as we know, the general consensus among Americans that we've heard from or that we've seen on reporting in the U.S. is that their biggest concern is not about anger towards Canadians avoiding the U.S., but fear that they're not going to feel welcome when they're here. And so I think a lot of Americans are concerned that it won't be a welcoming environment in Canada, and that may determine whether they do or do not travel here. So hopefully Americans, if they do still want to come to Canada, that they will feel welcome and with open arms. And there is a difference between the actions of the federal government and the American people. There's over 300 million people there, so they're welcome.
Put that niceness into action.
That's right, exactly.
McKenzie, always great to have you. Thanks for putting numbers and context to this conversation.
Oh, thanks for having me again.
McKenzie McMillan is a travel consultant with the Travel Group in Vancouver. Kurt writes from Nanaimo, I note that over 6 million Californians voted for Trump. Californians who miss Canadians and their money should contact their elected representatives to make the point and in future work for more responsible leadership. Karen and Vernon writes, perhaps rather than plead with Canadians to spare their economy, Governor Newsom and other Americans should ask their president and his government to stop trying to destroy ours. Scott in Burnaby writes, if California was serious about wanting Canadians to visit, they would offer to accept Canadian cash on par with the United States dollar. Not holding my breath for that one. Thank you for all of your emails. bctoday@cbc.ca. Your thoughts are always welcome. Whatever they may be. Love to hear from you. bctoday@cbc.ca. Thanks for joining us.